hypothetically, if you get mine.
Okay, we have Joshua Dale Wetzel.
This me?
Okay, we're on the record in the matter of the people of the state of Michigan versus Joshua Dale Wetzel. Council appearance.
Yes, Your Honor. Assistant Public Defender Scott Nickel on behalf of Mr. Wetzel for arraignment today.
Thank you. And you're Mr. Joshua Dale Wetzel, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Wetzel, today's the date that's set for an arraignment. I have here a felony complaint. It alleges that on or about September 3rd, 2022, at the area of 1516 Centennial Courtyard, located in the city of Lansing, Ingham County, state of Michigan, that you did allegedly, contrary to law, commit the act in count 1 of assault with an intent to do great bodily harm, less than murder, or by strangulation. It alleges that you did make an assault upon a Melissa Hunt by strangulation or suffocation, and that this was done contrary to Michigan compiled law 750.84. That's a felony with the maximum penalty of 10 years in prison and or $5,000 in fines. Your DNA is to be taken upon arrest, and a consecutive sentence may be imposed under the law if the assault was committed in a place of confinement. There's a count 2 of malicious destruction of personal property. It alleges that you did willfully and maliciously destroy or injure a key fob, the personal property of Melissa Hunt, and the amount of the destruction or injury was $200 or more, but less than $1,000. This was done contrary to Michigan compiled law 750.377A1CI. That's a misdemeanor with the maximum penalty of 1 year and or $2,000 in fines, or 3 times the amount of destruction or injury, whichever is greater. Do you understand the charge and the maximum penalty attached to the charge, sir?
Yes, Your Honor, I do.
Mr. Wetzel, you have the right to be represented by counsel. Mr. Nickel is here today from the Public Defender's Office for the purposes of your arraignment only, but you have the right to have an attorney with you to represent you at each stage of the criminal prosecution. If you cannot afford to hire counsel, you can request to have the assistance of counsel appointed at the expense of the public. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, is he requesting court-appointed counsel?
He is.
Okay, Mr. Wetzel, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say, anything you put in writing can be used against you. You have the right to plead guilty. You have the right to plead not guilty, and you have the right to stand mute. You have the right to proceed to a preliminary examination in this matter because it's a felony. And you have the right to have that preliminary examination within 21 days of today's date, which is the day of your arraignment. At the time of your examination, you have the right to have the prosecution meet their burden by establishing that there's sufficient probable cause that a crime was committed and sufficient probable cause to charge you as the defendant who committed the crime. If this matter is to proceed beyond the stage of preliminary examination, it'll be bound over to the circuit court. At the time of circuit court, you have the right to proceed to a trial, and you have the right to have a jury trial. At the time of trial, you have the right to call any witnesses to speak on your behalf or to further any defense that you believe you may have to the charge. You have the right to bring evidence that you believe would further any defense. You have the right to hear, see, or question any of the witnesses that the prosecution intends to call against you. You have the right to remain silent at trial and not have silence be used to imply or prove that you're guilty. You have the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty, and you have the right to have the prosecution prove each element of the charges being brought against you. They have to prove each element beyond a reasonable doubt. You also have the right to be considered for pretrial release from custody, and we will address your bond in just a moment.
Thank you, Your
For
Honor.
purposes of today's arraignment, the court will enter a plea of not guilty on his behalf. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Wetzel, are you currently employed?
Yes, ma'am. I just got a job at Amazon.
What's your home address, sir?
It was 1516 Centennial. Now it's going to be at my parents' on Allegan Road in Vermontville. I'm sorry, I forgot the address again.
You said in Albion?
No, Allegan Road in Vermontville.
Oh, Allegan Road, okay.
And Your Honor, the address is 6519 Allegan Road. I was able to look that up with Mr. Wetzel earlier.
Okay. What's your phone number, sir?
517-213-3140.
You're currently scheduled for probable cause conference before me, Judge Kristen Simmons. It's going to be on September 15th, 2022 at 1:30 p.m. in the afternoon. That will be handled via Zoom, or you can appear in person if you need to. Then there is a preliminary examination that will be held in person here at the court. That's currently scheduled for September 23rd, 2022 at 8:30 in the morning. Did you receive a notice to appear today, sir?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay, very good. Do you have any questions about your rights at this time?
I do not.
Are you currently on probation or parole?
No, Your Honor.
You can proceed to address bond, Mr. Nickel.
Yes, I did have a chance to speak with Mr. Wetzel this morning. As he informed the court, he recently received a job which he starts on Tuesday. He reports that he's never failed to appear. The only thing he reported prior on his record was a prior domestic violence charge, which he received 769 for a status for. And he does have an address to live with his parents in Vermontville, and so he will not be living or searching for a place to live separate from the victim. And so I would ask that the court release Mr. Wetzel on a personal recognizance bond. We discussed what the no contact order will mean, and he did not seem to express any difficulty in being able to abide by that. I believe he can abide by the court orders and appear at all his court dates as required. Thank you.
Bond will be set in the amount of $1,000 personal recognizance. While out on bond, there will be a contact order put in place to protect Melissa Hunt. So you're not to have any contact with Ms. Hunt directly or indirectly. So that means that if for some reason you thought you could send a message through someone else, that would constitute indirect communication, and you're not allowed to do that, okay?
Understood, Your Honor.
You're not to have communication of any type. You're not to be within 1,500 feet of wherever she lives, works, or goes to school. That means you cannot be at the address of 1516 Centennial Courtyard. You're not to engage in any assaultive or threatening behavior. You're not to use, purchase, or possess any drugs or alcohol unless you have a prescription for the drugs. You're not to engage or to possess a firearm or any other dangerous weapon. You're not to travel outside the state without prior approval of the court. You need to report to pretrial services within 48 hours of release. You'll be reporting to them weekly, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any questions so far about your bond conditions?
I guess I don't know what a PR bond is. I've never had that before.
That means I'm going to release you on your personal recognizance. And that means you're going to be released today without having to pay anything, because we're trusting that you're going to return to court and that you're going to follow all the orders that I just issued to you, okay?
Yes, ma'am. Understood, Your Honor.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, well, I guess I'll see you on the 15th of September. Any additional matters for the record?
No, Your Honor.
You're all set, sir.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
No problem. Okay, we're on the record in the matter of the people of the state of Michigan versus Neva Daniel Brown. Council appearance, please.
Yes, Assistant Public Defender Scott Nickel on behalf of Ms. Brown for arraignment this morning.
Thank you. Ms. Brown, how are you?
Good.
Okay, today's the date that's set for an arraignment. I have a felony complaint here that states that on or about September 4th, 2022, at the area of 517 West Madison Street, apartment 4, located in the city of Lansing, Ingham County, state of Michigan, that you did allegedly, contrary to law, commit the act in count 1 of assault with a dangerous weapon, also known as felonious assault. It alleges that you did make an assault upon a Brian Hammond with a dangerous weapon, that being a knife, but without intending to commit the crime of murder or to inflict great bodily harm less than the crime of murder. This was done contrary to Michigan Compile Law 750.82. This is a felony. The maximum penalty is 4 years and/or $2,000 in fines. Your DNA is to be taken upon arrest, and a consecutive sentence may be imposed under the law if the assault was committed in a place of confinement. Do you understand the charge that was just read to you and the maximum penalty, ma'am?
I understand it, but it's a lie.
Okay, well, I didn't ask if you agreed with the charge. I was just asking if you understand. This is just an arraignment, so the purposes of today's hearing is to read the charges to you and explain to you your rights. As to any defenses, though, you'll have an opportunity to address that at another time, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm assuming that's a yes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, Ms. Brown, you have the right to be represented by counsel. Mr. Nichols is representing you today for the purposes of your arraignment only, but you have the right to have an attorney with you at each stage of the criminal prosecution, and if you're going to be questioned by law enforcement. And you have the right to have an attorney with you, even if you can't afford one. So if you can't afford to have an attorney, you can request to have one appointed at the expense of the public. Do you understand that?
Mm-hmm,
Is that a yes?
mm-hmm,
No, you need to use your words, ma'am.
yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Is she requesting court-appointed counsel?
She is, Your Honor.
Okay, and Ms. Brown, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say and anything that you put in writing can be used against you. You have the right to plead guilty. You have the right to plead not guilty, or you can stand mute. You have the right to proceed to a preliminary examination in this matter. You have the right to have your examination within 21 days of today's date. At the time of examination, you have the right to have the prosecution meet their burden of establishing that there's sufficient probable cause that a crime was committed and probable cause sufficient to charge you with that crime. This matter is to proceed beyond the preliminary examination. They'll be bound over to the circuit court for further prosecution. You have the right to have a trial in the circuit court. You have the right to have a jury trial at the time of trial. You have the right to remain silent and not have silence be used to imply or prove that you're guilty. You have the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. You have the right to call witnesses at trial or present evidence that you believe would further a defense. You have the right to see, hear, or question any of the witnesses that the prosecution calls. You have the right to have the prosecution prove each element of the charges being brought against you. They have to prove each element beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you have any questions about those rights?
No,
Okay. For the purposes of her arraignment, how would you like to plead, Mr. Nickel?
Not guilty, Your Honor.
The court will enter a plea of not guilty on your behalf. You're currently scheduled for probable cause conference before Judge Cynthia Ward on September 16, 2022 at 8 o'clock in the morning. That will be held via Zoom, although you can't appear in person if you don't have the ability to appear via Zoom. Your
mhm,
preliminary examination is also before Judge Ward. That's going to be in person here at the court, and that's going to be on September 23rd, 2022 at 8:30 in the morning. Did you get a notice to appear, ma'am?
You did, Your Honor.
It should be the white sheet, ma'am.
I'm reading it now. Yeah,
Okay, thank you. And do you have any questions at this time?
no,
Okay. Are you currently on probation or parole?
no,
Are you currently employed?
yes.
Where do you work?
Home and home, I'm an adult care giver. I'm a NA nurse assistant. CNA,
Okay. Thank you. And what's your home address?
517 West Madison.
Okay, where are you, does Brian Hammond live there?
Yeah,
Okay, you can't stay there during the pendency of this matter, so where can you stay?
I don't know. I'm gonna get my
Oh.
stuff from over there.
Okay, well, you're not allowed to go over there.
Well, how
Because
am I gonna get my stuff? You gonna go get it?
I sure am not. I sure will not be going to get your stuff for you, but there will be an order for you not to go over there.
Well, I need my stuff.
Yeah, well, you'll have to make other arrangements. You'll have, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. You'll have to make other arrangements. This is not a
Okay.
negotiation either.
Okay.
Okay, what's your phone number?
248 367-7931.
Ms. Neva, you can address Bond.
Yes, Your Honor, I did have a chance to speak with Ms. Brown. She informs me, it looks like her only prior record is some minor driving offenses and an impaired driving from 2020. She is employed. She has been living in the Lansing area for the past 42 years. She reports that she's never failed to appear for any court hearing before. And if she cannot reside at the address she was previously living at, she said she is willing to reside at a shelter while she looks for some other place to live. But she would request permission to potentially have a third party go over to the residence just to pick up her property, so that she can have her clothes and other personal effects while this case is proceeding and she cannot return to the residence.
Okay.
I would ask that Your Honor to release her on a personal recognizance bond at this time.
Okay, just based on today's interactions, her communication with the court, she's made it clear she's not willing to follow the court's orders already. I don't know what your experience was and just having a private discussion with her, but I think she needs to undergo a CMH evaluation personally. So I am going to order that. I'm also going to order that she be released on GPS tether. These are some pretty serious charges or allegations. And
Lies.
they're pretty concerning. And I'm not, this is not your opportunity to speak, but I will give you an opportunity when I'm done, okay? They're very concerning, and so I do believe there is a risk to the public safety, but primarily to the victim. There will be a no contact order issued protecting Brian Hammond. Ms. Brown, you're not to be within 1,500 feet of wherever Mr. Hammond lives, works, or goes to school. You're not to be at the address of 517 West Madison Street, apartment 4. You're not to engage in any assaultive or threatening behavior. You're not to use any alcohol or drugs unless you have a valid prescription. You're not to travel outside the state without prior approval of the court. You're not to possess a firearm, knife, or any other dangerous weapon during the pendency of this matter. You need to report to pretrial services within 48 hours of release. You'll be reporting to them weekly. So I will set the bond at $1,000 personal recognizance with GPS tether and victim notification. Okay, did you have a question, ma'am? Okay, so it sounds like she has no questions. Any additional matters for the record, counsel?
Nothing further for the record.
Thank you, you're all set. Keanu Chang. On the record of the matter, the people of the state of Michigan versus Keanu Chang. I don't have a file number, actually. Council appearance.
Assistant Public Defender Scott Nickel on behalf of Mr. Chang for arraignment today.
Thank you. You're Mr. Keanu Chang.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Chang, I have a felony complaint here. It alleges that on or about September 3rd, 2022, at the area of Madison Street at or near North Pine Street, City of Lansing, Ingham County, State of Michigan, that you did in count 1 allegedly commit the act of controlled substance possession, cocaine, heroin, or another narcotic less than 25 grams. It alleges that you did knowingly or intentionally possess less than 25 grams of a mixture containing the controlled substance cocaine, contrary to Michigan Compiled Law 333.74032AV. That's a felony with a maximum penalty of 4 years and or $25,000 in fines. Do you understand the charge and the maximum penalty associated with the charge, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
You have the right to be represented by counsel. Mr. Nickel is here for the purposes of your arraignment only. You have the right to have an attorney with you at each stage of the criminal prosecution, or if you're questioned by law enforcement, to represent you. If you cannot afford to hire an attorney, you can request to have an attorney appointed to represent you at the expense of the public. Do you understand that, right?
I do.
Okay. Is he requesting a court-appointed attorney?
He is not, Your Honor.
Okay, you're, Mr. Chang, you're planning to hire or retain private counsel?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say and anything that you put in writing can be used against you. You have the right to proceed to a preliminary examination in this matter. You have the right to have your preliminary examination within 21 days of today's date. At the time of your examination, you have the right to have the prosecution meet their burden of establishing that there's sufficient probable cause that a crime was committed and probable cause sufficient to charge you with the crime. You have the right to plead guilty, you have the right to plead not guilty, and you have the right to stand mute. If this matter is to proceed beyond a preliminary examination, you would have the right then to have your trial in the circuit court. You have the right to have a jury trial in this matter. At the time of trial, you have the right to remain silent and not have silence be used to imply or prove that you're guilty. You have the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You have the right to question and see and hear any of the witnesses the prosecution intends to call. You have the right to call your own witnesses or present evidence at trial that you believe would further a defense to the charge. You have the right to have the prosecution prove each element of the charge being brought against you, and they have to prove each element beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand those rights so far?
Yes, Your Honor.
You also have the right to be considered for release from pretrial custody. Let's see here. For the purposes of his arraignment, is he pleading not guilty?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Chang, you're currently scheduled for probable cause conference on September 15, 2022 at 9 o'clock in the morning before Judge Tony Flores. You have a preliminary examination before Judge Flores on September 22nd, 2022 at 9 a.m. Did you get a copy of your notice for those dates?
I did.
Are you currently employed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Where are you employed?
DSU Real Estate.
What's your home address?
940 North Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard.
Your phone number?
517-619-8610.
Are you currently on probation or parole?
I'm on a delayed sentence through Eaton County, but if everything goes well, then no. But I don't think I'm technically on probation or parole.
Is that before the 56th circuit?
I think so, yes.
You can address bond.
Yes, Your Honor, I did have a chance to talk with Mr. Chang. He did inform me that he is employed, that he's never failed to appear in court before. He did report that he is on deferred sentence in, delayed sentence in Eaton County, and has been reporting and doing all the things he needs to do out there. He reported that he's never failed to appear for a court proceeding before. He has a stable address to live at. I would ask the court to consider releasing him on a personal recognizance bond at this time, as this is not a violent offense and he has limited criminal history. I did also notify Mr. Chang that he should reach out on Tuesday to the attorney that represented him in that case. One, for representation here, is that what he planned to do? And two, for advice on how to address these charges with what's ever going on in Eaton County so that it's reported properly. But I would ask that the court release him on a PR bond at this time, as it appears he will appear for court dates and is not a danger to the community at this time.
Okay, very good. Okay, so I will grant the request for personal recognizance bond. Bond will be set in the amount of $5,000 personal recognizance. While out on bond, Mr. Chang, you need to make sure you appear to all of your court dates. You need to make sure that you do not engage in any assaultive or threatening behavior. You're not to purchase or possess alcohol or drugs unless you have a valid prescription. Not to travel outside the state without prior approval of the court. Not to purchase or possess a firearm or any other dangerous weapon. And you need to report to pretrial services within 48 hours of your release. And you should have been provided that information from the jail. Do you have any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Any additional matters for the record, counsel?
Nothing further for the record, Your Honor.
You're all set, sir.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Okay. Aaron Christopher Jenkins. On the record in the matter, the people of the state of Michigan versus Aaron Christopher Jenkins, counsel appearance.
Yes, Assistant Public Defender Scott Nickel on behalf of Mr. Jenkins for arraignment this morning.
How are you, Mr. Jenkins?
I'm all right.
Okay, today is the date that's set for your arraignment, and I have here a felony complaint. It alleges that on or about September 3rd, 2022, at the area of 4245 West Jolly Road, Unit 166, located in the city of Lansing, Ingham County, state of Michigan, that you did allegedly contrary to law commit the act in count 1 of assault with intent to do great bodily harm less than murder or by strangulation. It alleges that you did make an assault upon a Heather Beers by strangulation or suffocation. This was done contrary to Michigan Compiled Law 750.84. That's a felony, and the maximum penalty is 10 years and or $5,000. Your DNA is to be taken upon arrest, and a consecutive sentence may be imposed under the law if the assault was committed in a place of confinement. There's a count 2 of domestic violence, and it alleges that you did make an assault or assault battery upon a Heather Beers, who is an individual with whom you have a child in common or an individual with whom you have a dating relationship. This was done contrary to Michigan Compiled Law 750.812. Restitution may be ordered as this offense may have been may have resulted in damage to another individual's property or physical injury or death to another individual. This is a misdemeanor. The maximum penalty is 93 days in jail and or $500 in fines. Again, a consecutive sentence may be imposed under the law if the assault was committed in a place of confinement. Do you understand the charges and the maximum penalty attached to each charge?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Jenkins, you have the right to be represented by counsel, and you're represented today by Mr. Nickel for the purposes of your arraignment only. You have the right to have an attorney with you at each stage of the criminal prosecution, or if you are questioned by law enforcement. If you cannot afford to hire an attorney, you can request to have an attorney appointed at the expense of the public. Do you understand your right to representation?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is he requesting court-appointed counsel?
He is, Your Honor.
Mr. Jenkins, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say and anything that you put in writing can be used against you. You can plead guilty, you can plead not guilty, or you can stand mute. You have the right to proceed to a preliminary examination in this matter. You have the right to have that examination within 21 days of today's date at the time of your examination. You have the right to have the prosecution bring sufficient evidence to establish that there's probable cause sufficient to charge you with the crime, and probable cause sufficient that a crime was committed, and probable cause to charge you as the person who committed the crime. Do you understand that right as to the preliminary examination?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Your Honor. Sorry.
You're fine, sir. Okay, if this matter proceeds beyond preliminary examination, you would have the right to proceed to a trial, and you have the right to have a jury trial. At the time of trial, you have the right to be represented by counsel. You have the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. You have the right to remain silent at trial and not have silence be used to prove or imply that you're guilty. You have the right to question any of the witnesses that the prosecution intends to call. You have the right to see and hear those witnesses and confront them in court. You have the right to call your own witnesses or present evidence at trial that you believe would further a defense to the charges. You have the right at trial to have the prosecution prove each of the elements being brought against you, and they have to prove each of the elements beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you have any questions about those rights at this time?
No, Your Honor.
You have the right to be considered for pretrial release from custody, and we'll address your bond in a moment. For the purposes of his arraignment, how would you like to plead?
He would be entering a not guilty plea at this time.
Okay, the court will enter a plea of not guilty on your behalf. You're currently scheduled for a probable cause conference before Judge Stacia Buchanan. It's going to be held via Zoom on September 15, 2022 at 8:30 in the morning. You can't appear in person if you do not have the ability to appear via Zoom, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
You'll have a preliminary examination before Judge Buchanan in person here at the court. It's going to be on September 22nd, 2022 at 9:30 in the morning. Did you receive a notice to appear, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Are you currently on probation or parole?
No, Your Honor.
Are you currently employed?
Not yet, Your Honor.
What does not yet mean? Are you looking for employment?
Yeah, I currently just moved back here from North Carolina, and I have 2 interviews. One on Tuesday, one on Wednesday.
What's your current address?
4834 Duvernay Drive.
What's your phone number?
704-649-3493.
You can address bond.
Yes, Your Honor, I did have the chance to speak with Mr. Jenkins. As he stated, he has recently moved back to the Lansing area, where he had resided since '05 after being in North Carolina for about a year. He does have 2 interviews scheduled for this week. He reports he's never failed to appear for a court hearing before. The only entry I saw on his criminal record was a prior possession of marijuana charge from 2017. Would also note that he does have an 8-year-old child that I believe he shares with the alleged victim in this case. So he has connections with the community. Has no history of failing to appear in a limited criminal history. So I would ask the court to consider releasing him on a personal recognizance bond. I would also ask the court to consider making a modification to the standard no contact order to allow third-party contact in relation to the child that the 2 of them share. I did explain to him that if the court did that, that communication could only be about the child and that it would not permit him to directly communicate with the alleged victim in the case in any way. Thank you, Your Honor.
A bond will be set in the amount of $2,000 personal recognizance. While out on bond, there will be a no contact order in place. But Mr. Jenkins, you cannot have any contact with Miss Heather Beers, not directly or indirectly. If you want to get an order for communication third party, you can take that up at the family court, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
You're not to be any place where Ms. Beers lives, works, or goes to school. Do you have any questions about the no contact order?
No, Your Honor.
You need to make sure you appear to all of your future court dates while out on bond. You're not to use or possess alcohol or drugs unless you have a valid prescription. You're not to travel outside the state without prior approval of the court. You're not to engage in any assaultive or threatening behavior. You're not to possess or purchase a firearm or any other dangerous weapon. You're going to need to report to pretrial services and you'll be reporting to them weekly. You should report to them within 48 hours of your release. And you should have received the information to contact them from the jail. Do you have any questions today, sir?
Yes, Your Honor. You said contact Child Protective Services?
No,
I heard that
pretrial
right?
services. No, I said
Oh.
pretrial services. Yeah, you don't need to contact Child Protective Services for this case. But you will be reporting to pretrial services while you're out on release from custody during this matter, okay?
Yes, ma'am. And you said that's, yes, I mean, I'm sorry. Yes, Your Honor. You said that's the 15th?
Your next court date is going to be on September 15th at 8:30 before Judge Buchanan, and you can appear for that virtually via Zoom. You should have received the Zoom instructions, or you can appear in person, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, do you have any other questions, sir?
No, Your Honor.
Any additional matters for the record, counsel?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, you're all set, Mr. Jenkins.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. That's all I have from the jail.
Yes, it is, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.
Yep.
Thank you, you too.